Close your eyes for a moment and picture a world trembling on the edge of history. The skies are darkening, nations are restless, and the earth itself seems to groan beneath the weight of chaos. Strange dreams stir the hearts of men and women. Visions flash across the minds of the faithful, and whispers of prophecy echo in places where no one expected to hear the voice of God. This is not fiction. This is not a tale of imagination. This is the living prophecy of Joel, a message that surged like fire from the lips of a prophet thousands of years ago, and still burns across the pages of time. Joel saw beyond his generation. He saw beyond his nation. He saw a day when heaven would collide with earth, when God would pour out his Spirit in a measure so vast, so unstoppable, that every barrier of age, gender, and status would be broken. The world has always tried to dismiss dreams as fantasy, visions as delusion, and prophecy as myth. But Joel tells us these are the very channels through which God will prepare his people for the greatest shaking the world has ever seen. And the question is not whether these things will happen, but whether we are awake enough to recognize them when they come. The prophetic backdrop. Joel's prophecy did not arise in a time of peace. His nation had been struck by devastation. Locusts swept across the land like a vast army, stripping vineyards bare, devouring fields, and leaving the people without hope. The destruction was so complete that Joel described it as if fire had consumed everything in sight. But Joel, under the inspiration of the Spirit, looked at the locusts and saw more than insects. He saw a divine warning. He saw a shadow of a greater event. He saw what he called the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord was not merely a future date on the calendar. It was the unfolding of God's judgment and mercy woven into history. For Joel, the locusts were not the end but the beginning. A trumpet blast meant to call the people to repentance. The plague was physical, but its meaning was deeply spiritual. Joel urged the priests to weep, the people to fast, and the entire nation to turn back to God with urgency. In his eyes, temporary devastation was only a glimpse of eternal realities. The world today mirrors that same trembling stage. Crises erupt across the globe, pandemics, wars, economic collapses, natural disasters. Like Joel's locusts, these events are not random. They are alarms sounding across nations. They are previews of a greater day still to come. The promise of the Spirit. In the middle of warnings and calls to repentance, Joel's prophecy suddenly shifts. He unveils a promise so staggering that it pierces the darkness with radiant hope. God declares, "I will pour out my Spirit on all flesh." This is not a drop. It is not a trickle. It is an outpouring, a flood that breaks every boundary. Sons and daughters will prophesy. Young men will see visions. Old men will dream dreams. Servants and masters alike will be touched by the hand of God. The beauty of Joel's prophecy lies in its inclusivity. The Spirit is not for the prophets alone. It is not for kings or priests only. It is for the young who are often dismissed, for the old who are often overlooked, for men and women alike, for the poor as much as for the rich. When God pours out his Spirit, the divisions of human society collapse under the weight of divine presence. Centuries later, on the day of Pentecost, Peter stood before a bewildered crowd and declared, "This is that which was spoken by the prophet Joel." The Spirit had fallen, tongues of fire had descended, and suddenly ordinary men and women were speaking mysteries of God. Pentecost was the dawn of Joel's prophecy, but it was not the sunset. The outpouring continues, growing more intense as the world moves closer to its final chapter. Dreams, visions, and prophecy are not accidents. They are the language of heaven, breaking into the realm of men. They are God's way of preparing his people for seasons of darkness and for the glory of his coming. If you have felt strange stirrings in the night, if you have seen visions during prayer that you cannot explain, Joel tells us these may be more than imagination. They may be whispers of the Spirit in your soul. Joel does not stop with dreams and visions. He turns our eyes to the heavens and the earth. He speaks of wonders in the sky and signs upon the earth, blood, fire, smoke. He declares that the sun will turn to darkness and the moon to blood before the great and terrible day of the Lord. These words are not poetic exaggerations. They are descriptions of cosmic disturbances that will shake the very foundations of the created world. When the heavens darken and the earth trembles, humanity will no longer be able to ignore the reality of God's intervention. Today, we see shadows of these signs. We see eclipses, blood moons, and strange disturbances in creation. We see nations at war, pillars of smoke rising from cities, and fire consuming lands across the earth. Joel reminds us that these are not coincidences. They are signals from heaven, reminders that the clock of prophecy is ticking, and the day of the Lord draws near. Yet even as these warnings shake the earth, Joel does not leave God's people in despair. In the same breath he declares, "Everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved." The very signs that terrify the world become a beacon of hope for those who trust in God. Dreams and visions as tools of hope. In times of uncertainty, God does not leave his people wandering in the dark. He speaks through dreams and visions to guide, to protect, and to prepare. Joseph in Egypt received a dream that preserved nations. Daniel in Babylon received visions that revealed the course of empires. Peter in Acts received a vision that opened the doors of the gospel to the Gentiles. Joel's prophecy assures us that such encounters will not be rare in the last days. They will be widespread. The Spirit of God will be poured out on many, and supernatural guidance will become the normal experience of those who walk with him. Dreams and visions are not only spiritual experiences, they are strategies of survival. They are divine directions in seasons when human wisdom fails. They are God's way of positioning his people for breakthrough when the world is collapsing around them. The prophecy of Joel is not a story to admire from a distance. It is a living word that demands a response. If dreams and visions are increasing, will you take them seriously? If signs in the heavens and on the earth are intensifying, will you remain asleep, or will you awaken to what God is doing? Joel does not call us to fear. He calls us to repentance, to readiness, to intimacy with the Spirit of God. The outpouring has already begun. The signs are already unfolding. The voice of prophecy is still speaking. The choice rests with us. Will we be the generation that sleeps through the alarm, or will we be the generation that rises, filled with the Spirit, walking in dreams and visions, declaring with boldness that the day of the Lord is near? Moral lesson: Joel's prophecy is not about a distant tomorrow. It is God's alarm clock ringing in our present, calling us to wake up before the final hour strikes.